The morning came slowly. Danny had not slept well. His thoughts had kept him awake, circling around and around like birds that could not find a place to land. He kept thinking about the council, about Torvax's words, about the purple alien who had called humanity dangerous. He kept wondering what the decision would be, and whether his species would be welcomed into the stars or locked away on their little blue planet forever. When the summons came, Danny was already dressed and waiting. A guard appeared at his door and told him that the council had reached a verdict. All the humans were to gather in the main assembly hall to hear the announcement. Danny walked through the corridors of the alien ship with his heart pounding in his chest. Linda fell into step beside him, and then Captain Harris, and then the rest of the human delegation. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. In a few minutes, they would know whether humanity had a future among the stars. The assembly hall was different from the council chamber. It was smaller, warmer, filled with soft light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. High Arbiter Kelvoreth stood at the front of the room, his rough gray face unreadable. Behind him, a row of alien officials sat in curved chairs, representing different species of the Commonwealth. And off to one side, sitting in a chair that glowed with gentle blue light, was Zilthara. The humans gathered at the back of the room and waited. Kelvoreth stepped forward. His voice was deep and formal, carrying easily through the silent hall. "We have spent many hours discussing the question of humanity," he began. "We have heard arguments from those who believe your species is too dangerous to join us. We have heard arguments from those who believe you are too unstable, too unpredictable, too different from the other members of our community." Danny felt his heart sink. This did not sound like a good beginning. "But we have also heard from those who see your differences as something valuable," Kelvoreth continued. "Something that our Commonwealth has lost over the long centuries of peace. We have grown comfortable. We have grown stagnant. We have forgotten what it means to adapt, to endure, to keep moving forward when all logic says to stop." The Arbiter paused and looked directly at the humans. "Humanity will be admitted to the Interstellar Commonwealth." Danny felt the air leave his lungs. Around him, the other humans gasped and grabbed each other's hands. Linda squeezed his arm, so tight it hurt. Captain Harris closed his eyes and let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. "You are not like us," Kelvoreth said. "Your minds are strange and chaotic. Your emotions are wild and contradictory. You carry pain inside you that would break any other species we have known. But you also carry something else, something we had forgotten existed." He turned and gestured toward Torvax, who sat among the officials with a small smile on his ancient face. "You carry the ability to survive, to adapt, to fall down and stand up again, to lose everything and rebuild from nothing. We do not fully understand you yet. We may never fully understand you, but we believe that your presence among us will make us stronger, not weaker. And so we welcome you." The humans erupted in cheers. Danny found himself laughing and crying at the same time, emotions crashing into each other inside his chest. He hugged Linda, then Captain Harris, then Dr. Corinne Price, who was crying too. For a moment, all the fear and uncertainty of the past days melted away, replaced by pure and simple joy. But the celebration was interrupted by a soft voice. "Human, Danny Scott." Danny turned. Zilthara had risen from her chair and was walking toward him. Her steps were slow and careful, but her 4 blue eyes were bright and clear. The room fell silent as she approached. Danny swallowed hard. "Yes?" Zilthara stopped in front of him. She was tall, and he had to look up to meet her eyes. For a long moment, she simply studied his face, as if memorizing every detail. "Touching your mind was the most painful experience of my life," she said quietly. "I felt things I did not know it was possible to feel. I saw depths I did not know existed. For a moment, I thought I would drown in your thoughts and never find my way back to the surface." Danny did not know what to say. "I'm sorry," he managed, but Zilthar shook her head slowly. "Do not be sorry, because it was also the most beautiful thing I have ever experienced." Danny stared at her. "Beautiful? I saw your suffering," she said, "but I also saw how you keep going despite it. I saw your fear, but also your courage standing right beside it. I saw your doubt, but also your faith refusing to die. I saw love that existed alongside resentment, hope that lived next to despair. You hold contradictions inside you that would tear any other mind apart. And you do not even notice. You simply continue." She reached out and touched his shoulder gently. Her fingers were cool and light. "Your species carries wounds that would cripple mine," Zilthara said. "And you call this normal. You wake up every day with storms inside your heads, and you simply continue living. Do you understand how remarkable that is?" Danny thought about it. He thought about his loud thoughts and his messy feelings and all the things he had always believed were wrong with him. And for the first time, he wondered if maybe those things were not wrong at all. Maybe they were just human. What else would we do? He asked, simply. Zilthara made a sound that was almost like laughter. "Exactly," she said. "Exactly." Later that day, the human delegation returned to the starward. The ship's corridors were filled with excited voices and happy faces. News of humanity's acceptance had spread quickly, and everyone wanted to celebrate. Captain Harris made a speech about new beginnings and bright futures. Dr. Karen Price opened a bottle of something she had been saving for a special occasion. Even Commander Tony Reeves, who never smiled, had a small grin on his weathered face. Danny found himself on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The alien ship was still visible in the distance, a silver shape against the endless black. Soon the starward would jump to faster-than-light speed and carry the news back to Earth. A new chapter in human history was about to begin. Captain Harris found him there. The captain stood beside Danny and looked out at the stars, too. "How does it feel to be the man who gave an alien a nervous breakdown?" Harris asked. Danny thought about the question. He thought about Zilthara's scream, about the council debate, about the long, strange journey that had led him here. He thought about his mother back on Earth, who would be so proud when she heard the news. He thought about all the humans who would come after him, traveling to new worlds, meeting new species, carrying their beautiful, chaotic minds into the vast darkness of space. "I don't know, sir," Danny finally said. "I guess I'm still processing it." Captain Harris laughed and clapped him on the shoulder. "That's the most human answer you could have given." Danny smiled. Outside the window, the stars waited. They had always been there, silent and patient, shining their light across the endless void. And now, at last, humanity was ready to join them. Chaos, contradictions, and all. The council chamber was enormous. It stretched up and up into darkness, like the inside of a cathedral built for giants. Hundreds of aliens sat in curved rows of seats that circled a central platform, and each alien looked different from the ones beside them. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had skin that glowed with inner light. There were beings with 2 eyes and beings with 12. There were creatures that floated in tanks of liquid and creatures that seemed to be made of living stone. Danny had never seen so many different forms of life gathered in one place. And all of them were talking about humanity. The humans had not been invited to speak at this council meeting. They were allowed to watch from a small observation room high above the chamber floor, but they could not participate in the debate. Captain Harris stood with his arms crossed, watching the aliens argue back and forth. Danny stood beside him, feeling very small and very alone. "This is madness," said one alien, a tall creature with purple skin and long, thin limbs. "If human minds can overwhelm a master telepath, They are too dangerous to be allowed into the Commonwealth. What happens when they develop their own mental abilities? What happens when they learn to weaponize their thoughts? We have no evidence that humans can develop telepathy, said another alien, this one short and round with golden fur. Their mental chaos might be a weakness, not a strength. They might simply be unstable creatures who cannot control their own thoughts. Then they are even more dangerous, the purple alien replied. An unstable species with chaotic minds could cause untold damage to our peaceful order. We should quarantine their planet and leave them alone. Danny felt sick to his stomach. These beings were deciding the fate of his entire species, and they spoke about humans like they were animals to be caged or pets to be controlled. He wanted to shout at them, to defend his people, to explain that humans were not monsters or threats. But his voice would not carry to the chamber floor, and the aliens would not listen to him even if it could. Then a new voice spoke up. It was old and crackling, like the sound of dry leaves in the wind. You are all missing the point. The chamber fell silent. Danny looked down and saw an ancient alien shuffling toward the central platform. This creature was small and bent, with gray wrinkled skin and eyes that were milky white with age. He moved slowly, but when he reached the center of the room, every other alien leaned forward to listen. Who is that? Danny whispered. Torvax. Captain Harris replied quietly. He's a scholar, one of the oldest beings in the Commonwealth. They say he has studied more species than anyone else alive. Torvax stood in the center of the chamber and looked up at the rows of watching aliens. His voice was weak, but it carried clearly through the silence. I have studied hundreds of species, he said. I have traveled to 1,000 worlds and seen 1,000 different forms of life. And in all my years, I have learned one simple truth. The universe does not favor the strong. The universe favors the adaptable. He paused to let his words settle. Most species in this Commonwealth evolved on stable worlds. Gentle planets with mild weather and few predators. Your minds are simple because your lives were simple. You did not need complex thoughts to survive. You only needed to be focused, to be calm, to think one thing at a time. Torvax turned slowly, looking at different sections of the chamber as he spoke. But humans evolved on a world of constant change. Their planet is violent and unpredictable. Ice ages that freeze their lands. Meteors that burn their skies. Diseases that kill millions. Predators that hunt them in the dark. Wars that destroy their cities. They have faced more challenges in their short history than most of you have faced in 1,000,000 years. The chamber was completely silent now. Every alien was listening. Their minds became complex because they had to be, Torvax continued. They needed to think many thoughts at once in order to survive. They needed to hold contradictory ideas, to plan for multiple futures, to feel fear and hope at the same time. Their mental chaos is not a weakness. It is the result of evolution on a world that tried to kill them at every turn. The old scholar pointed up toward the observation room, toward the humans watching from above. Do you understand what this means? These beings carry chaos inside them and still function. They are broken and whole at the same time. They feel pain that would destroy us, and they keep walking. They suffer losses that would drive us mad, and they rebuild. They wake up each day with storms inside their heads, and they call this normal. Danny felt tears pricking at his eyes. He did not know why. Maybe it was because someone was finally defending his species. Maybe it was because the old alien's words felt true in a way that nothing had felt true in a long time. They are not a threat, Torvax said firmly. They are a gift. They are proof that life can survive anything, adapt to anything, endure anything. And if we turn them away because we are afraid of what we do not understand, then we are the ones who are too weak to belong in this galaxy. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some aliens shouted in agreement, others shouted in anger. The debate would continue for hours, Danny knew. But as he watched, he felt something shift inside him. Hope, maybe. Or something like it. Later that night, Danny sat alone in his quarters on the alien ship. His thoughts were loud, as they always were. He was thinking about the council meeting, about Ziltharas' words, about what it meant to have a storm inside his head. He was thinking about home, about his mother, about the stars outside his window. He was thinking about everything and nothing all at once. The door opened, and Linda came in. She sat down beside him without saying anything. For a long time, they just sat together in the quiet. I always felt like something was wrong with me, Danny finally said. My thoughts are always so loud. I can never focus on just one thing. I thought I was broken. Linda was quiet for a moment. Then she said, maybe something's right with us. Maybe we just didn't know it. Danny looked at her. In the soft light of the alien ship, her face was calm and kind. Do you really believe that? He asked. Linda smiled a little. I don't know, but I'd rather believe that than believe we're monsters. She reached out and squeezed his hand. Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll face it together, the way humans always do. Danny nodded slowly. Outside the window, a million stars burned in the darkness, each one a sun with its own worlds, its own life, its own stories. Somewhere out there, humanity's future was being decided, and all Danny could do was wait and hope and keep the storm inside him quiet for just a little while longer. The medical bay was quiet and dim. Soft blue lights glowed along the walls, casting gentle shadows across the room. Alien machines hummed and beeped in rhythms that Danny did not understand. In the center of the room, Zilthara lay on a bed that seemed to be made of light itself. Her silver skin had lost some of its shine, and her 4 eyes were open but tired. Danny stopped at the doorway. He was afraid to go closer. He had hurt this being without meaning to, and he did not want to hurt her again. But Zilthara raised one slender hand and gestured for him to enter. Her movement was slow and careful, like someone who had just survived a great storm. Come, she said. Her voice was still soft and musical, but there was a new depth to it now, a weight that had not been there before. I will not break. Not again. Danny walked into the room slowly. Guards and doctors lined the walls, watching him with careful eyes. Captain Harris stood in one corner, his face tight with worry. High Arbiter Kelvorath stood near the bed, his arms crossed over his broad chest. Everyone was waiting to hear what the telepath had to say. Zilthara looked at Danny for a long moment. Her 4 blue eyes studied his face like she was seeing something no one else could see. Then she let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, though there was no humor in it. I have scanned over 400 species, she began. Her voice was quiet, and everyone in the room leaned forward to hear her words. I have touched the minds of warriors who killed thousands and felt no regret. I have touched the minds of poets who loved so deeply that their hearts burned like stars. I have touched the minds of tyrants and saints, criminals and heroes, the old and the young, the dying and the newborn. I have felt joy and grief and rage and love in 1,000 different forms. She paused. Her eyes found Danny's and held them. I have never felt anything like what lives inside a human mind. The room was silent. Danny could hear his own heart beating in his ears. He wanted to ask what she meant, but his voice would not come. So he waited, and after a moment, Zilthara continued. When I touch a mind, she said, I expect to find a single stream of consciousness. One voice. One thought at a time. One feeling at a time. This is how minds work. This is how they have always worked in every species I have ever scanned. The Valorians think in clear lines. The Korthe think in colors. The Somani think in patterns of light, but they all think one thought at a time. It is the natural way of intelligent beings. She lifted her hand and pressed it against her own temple, as if remembering the pain. But when I touched your mind, human, I found something else entirely. I did not find a stream. I found a storm. Danny swallowed hard. A storm? You do not think one thought at a time, Zilthara said. You think in dozens, hundreds, all at once, all layered on top of each other. When I touched your mind, you were thinking about food, but you were also thinking about your mother, and also about a friend who died, and also about an itch on your ankle, and also about the person across the room who you find attractive, and also about a song from your childhood, and also about whether you are good enough, and also about mountains you will never see again. She paused to let her words sink in. Danny felt his face grow hot. Those were his thoughts. Those were the private things that lived inside his head. He had not known that anyone else could see them. All of these thoughts, Zilthara continued, were happening at the same time, not one after another, all together, like voices singing different songs at once. And beneath all of them, beneath the noise and the chaos, I found something else. Something even more strange. What? Danny asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Your subconscious, Zilthara said. She spoke the words slowly, like it was new and dangerous. A vast dark ocean beneath your waking mind. Memories you do not remember. Fears you have never named. Dreams you forget the moment you wake up. Thoughts and feelings that you do not even know you have. It is enormous. It is endless. And it is always there, always churning, always sending up waves that crash into your conscious thoughts without warning. Captain Harris stepped forward. Are you saying that all humans have this? Zilthara nodded slowly. I believe so. When I scanned your other crew members, I felt hints of the same thing. But their minds were calmer. Their storms were quieter. I was able to pass through them without being pulled under. She looked at Danny again. But this one's mind was louder, more intense. The storm was stronger. And when I tried to scan his surface thoughts, I fell into the depths instead. Danny did not know what to say. He had always thought his mind was too loud, too messy. He had always blamed himself for not being able to focus, for having thoughts that jumped from one thing to another like fish in a river. He had thought something was wrong with him. Now he was learning that maybe this was just how humans were. Maybe all of them carried storms inside their heads. Is this dangerous? High Arbiter Kelvorath asked. His voice was hard and suspicious. If human minds can overwhelm a master telepath, could they be used as weapons? Zilthara shook her head. I do not believe so. They do not seem to be aware of what their minds are doing. They do not control it. They simply live with it. She looked at Danny with something that might have been wonder. Your minds are not quiet gardens where thoughts grow in neat rows. Your minds are hurricanes pretending to be still. And you walk around as if this is normal. As if everyone lives this way. Danny found his voice at last. Everyone does live this way, he said. At least everyone I know. I thought this was just how minds worked. Zilthara made that sound again, the laugh without humor. No, she said softly. This is not how minds work. This is how human minds work. I do not know if it is a gift or a curse, but I know that it is something the galaxy has never seen before. Linda had entered the room at some point. She stood beside Danny now, her face pale but determined. What does this mean for us? She asked. For humanity? Zilthara was silent for a long moment. Then she closed her 4 eyes and leaned back against her bed of light. That, she said, is what the council must decide. The scream was not like anything Danny had ever heard. It was raw and primal. a sound of pure terror that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside the telepath's soul. Zilthara's 4 eyes went wide, wider than Danny had thought possible, and her silver skin turned white as fresh snow. Her whole body shook like a leaf in a storm. Then her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed to the floor. Danny stood frozen. He had not moved. He had not done anything. One moment the telepath was touching his head, and the next moment she was on the ground, her body twitching and jerking like a puppet with broken strings. Silver tears leaked from her closed eyes and pooled on the white floor beneath her. Everything happened very fast after that. The alien guards rushed forward, their weapons raised and pointed at Danny. They shouted in a language he did not understand, harsh sounds that echoed off the walls like thunder. Captain Harris moved without thinking, stepping in front of Danny and putting himself between his officer and the alien weapons. His hands were raised, his voice calm and steady, even though his face was tight with fear. "Stand down," Captain Harris said. "Nobody move. Let's all just calm down." High Arbiter Kelvorath was kneeling beside Zilthara. His rough gray hands touched her silver face gently, checking for signs of life. Other aliens crowded around them, speaking in quick, urgent voices. Some of them looked at Danny with expressions he could not read. Fear, maybe, or anger, or something else entirely. Danny's hands were shaking. He raised them slowly, showing everyone that he held no weapon, that he meant no harm. "I didn't do anything," he said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, thin and distant. "I swear. I was just standing there. I didn't do anything." Linda moved to his side. She put a hand on his arm, a small gesture of support. "He's telling the truth," she said loudly. "I was watching the whole time." He didn't move. He didn't say anything. He just stood there. Commander Tony Reeves nodded. "She's right. Whatever happened, it wasn't anything the lieutenant did on purpose." But the aliens were not listening. More guards had entered the room, and they formed a tight circle around the human group. Their weapons hummed with energy, ready to fire at the slightest provocation. Danny had seen weapons like these in briefings before. They could kill a human in less than a second. High Arbiter Kelvorath stood slowly, his small black eyes fixed on Danny with an intensity that made the young officer's blood run cold. The Arbiter's face was impossible to read, but there was something in his posture that spoke of great confusion. And beneath that confusion, Danny thought he saw something else. Something that looked almost like fear. "What did you do to her?" Kelvorath asked. His deep voice was quiet, but it carried across the silent room like a stone dropped into still water. "Nothing," Danny said again. "I promise you, I didn't do anything. I don't even know what happened. One second she was touching my head, and the next second she was screaming." "That is not possible," Kelvorath said. "Zilthara has scanned over 400 species. She has touched the minds of warriors and poets, tyrants and saints. She has never reacted like this. Something must have happened." Captain Harris stepped forward carefully, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "Arbiter, with your permission, we would like to review the visual recordings of the evaluation. Our officer is telling the truth. He did nothing but stand there. Whatever happened, it happened inside his mind, not outside it." There was a long pause. Kelvorath looked at the humans, then at the unconscious telepath on the floor, then back at the humans again. Finally, he nodded. "Very well," he said. "We will review the recordings together. But until we understand what has happened here, your officer will remain under guard." 2 alien guards moved to stand on either side of Danny. They did not touch him, but their presence was clear enough. He was not a prisoner, not exactly, but he was not free to leave either. They moved to a smaller room nearby. Someone had brought Zilthara to a medical area, where both alien and human doctors were working to help her. The rest of the group gathered around a large screen that showed the recording of the evaluation. Danny watched himself on the screen. He saw Zilthara approach him. He saw her raise her hand. He saw her fingers touch his temple. And then he saw her face change, her eyes going wide, her mouth opening, and that terrible scream pouring out of her. He watched himself stand there, perfectly still, his face confused and innocent. Linda was right. He had not moved. He had not done anything at all. "There," Captain Harris said, pointing at the screen. "You can see it clearly. Lieutenant Scott did nothing. Whatever caused this reaction, it was not any action on his part." Kalvorath watched the recording 3 times. His face remained impossible to read, but his hands were clenched into tight fists at his sides. Finally, he turned away from the screen and looked at Danny. "You say you did nothing," the Arbiter said slowly, "and the recording shows that you did nothing. But something happened when Zilthara touched your mind. Something terrible. And until she wakes and tells us what she saw, we will not know what that something was." "How long until she wakes up?" Danny asked. "We do not know," Kalvorath admitted. "In all our history, nothing like this has ever happened. Valorian telepaths are among the strongest minds in the galaxy. For one to be overwhelmed like this should not be possible." The words hung in the air like smoke. Danny felt the weight of them pressing down on his shoulders. He had done something impossible. He had hurt someone without meaning to, without even knowing how. And now everyone was looking at him like he was a monster. Linda squeezed his arm gently. "This isn't your fault," she whispered. "You didn't know. You couldn't have known." But Danny was not so sure. He had always felt like his mind was too loud, too messy, too full of thoughts that crashed into each other like waves against rocks. He had always assumed that everyone felt that way. Now he was starting to wonder if maybe he was different. Maybe all humans were different, and maybe that difference was something dangerous. The hours passed slowly. Danny sat in a small room with guards outside the door, waiting for news. He thought about his mother back on Earth, who had no idea what was happening. He thought about his friends on the Starward, who were probably worried about him. He thought about Zilthara, lying unconscious in the medical bay, silver tears still leaking from her closed eyes. What had she seen inside his mind? What could be so terrible that it would make a powerful telepath scream and collapse? Danny searched his own thoughts, looking for something dark, something dangerous. But all he found were the same things he always found. Memories, hopes, fears, dreams, the ordinary. Contents of an ordinary mind, at least. He had always thought they were ordinary. 3 hours after the incident, a guard came to the door. "The telepath is awake," he said. "She wishes to speak with the human." Danny stood slowly. His legs felt weak beneath him. But he made himself walk forward, through the door, down the corridor, toward the truth that was waiting for him. Whatever Zilthara had to say, he needed to hear it. The ship came out of nowhere. One moment the sky was empty, and the next moment it was there, hanging above Earth like a silver moon that had lost its way. It was beautiful in a strange way, all smooth curves and soft lights. Nothing like the sharp metal boxes humans built to travel through space. The whole world stopped to look up. Everyone knew what this meant. Humanity was not alone. Danny Scott was eating breakfast when the news came through. He was a lieutenant on the human vessel Starward, a communications officer who spent most of his days sending messages between ships and listening to static from distant stars. He was not special. He knew this about himself and had made peace with it long ago. He was good at his job, kind to the people around him, and he had a habit of humming old country songs when he worked. His mother always said he had a gentle heart. His commanding officers said he was reliable. Danny thought both things were just nice ways of saying he was ordinary. But ordinary people sometimes find themselves in extraordinary situations. That was how Danny ended up standing in a clean white room on an alien ship, waiting for something called a telepathic evaluation. The aliens called themselves the Interstellar Commonwealth. They had been watching humanity for a long time, they said, waiting until humans were ready to join the larger community of intelligent species that lived among the stars. Now they had decided that the time had come. But before humanity could be accepted, they needed to be tested. The test was simple, or so the aliens claimed. A telepath would touch each human volunteer and look briefly into their mind. The telepath would check their thoughts and feelings to make sure they were stable and peaceful. Every species in the Commonwealth had passed this test. It was considered a formality, nothing more than a quick handshake before the real work of building friendship could begin. The telepath's name was Zilthara. She was a Valorian, a species known across the galaxy for their mental abilities. Danny had never seen anything like her. She was tall, almost 7 feet, with skin that shimmered like polished silver. She had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on her face, and each eye glowed with a soft blue light. When she moved, it was like watching water flow. Everything about her was graceful and calm. Standing beside her was High Arbiter Kelvoreth, the leader of the alien delegation. He was from a different species, shorter and broader, with rough gray skin and small black eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He explained the process to the gathered humans with a voice that was deep and patient. "Zilthara will touch your temple," he said. "She will look at your surface thoughts and your emotional state. This will take only a moment. You will feel nothing. When she is done, she will tell us what she has seen, and we will make our judgment." Captain Greg Harris stood at the front of the human group. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face that had seen many years of service. He had been chosen to lead this mission because he was calm under pressure and because people trusted him. Right now, he looked calm, but Danny could see the tension in his shoulders. This was the most important moment in human history. No pressure at all. And if someone fails? Captain Harris asked. Kelvoreth made a gesture that might have been a shrug. No species has ever failed. Your minds are either stable enough for contact, or they are not. We have found that most intelligent species develop similar mental patterns. There is no reason to expect humans will be different. Danny looked around at the other volunteers. There were 12 of them in total, chosen from different ships and different backgrounds. Dr. Karen Price stood near the front, a medical officer with steady hands and a calm smile. She had volunteered first, saying that doctors should never ask patients to do something they would not do themselves. Behind her was Commander Tony Reeves, a pilot who had flown more missions than anyone could count. He looked bored, like this was just another task to check off his list. And then there was Linda Morrison, a communications officer like Danny. They had worked together for 2 years, and Danny considered her a friend. She caught his eye and gave him a small nod. "Everything will be fine," the nod seemed to say. Danny wished he felt as confident as she looked. The evaluation began. Dr. Karen Price stepped forward first. She stood straight and still as Zilthara approached her. The telepath moved with slow grace, raising one slender hand and pressing her fingers gently against Karen's temple. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Zilthara's 4 eyes flickered with something that might have been surprise. But it passed quickly, and she stepped back with a small nod. "Acceptable," Zilthara said. Her voice was soft and musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Karen returned to the group, and the next humans stepped forward. One by one, they went. Commander Tony Reeves, a scientist named Dr. Paul Grant, a young engineer named Chris Walsh. Each time, Zilthara touched their temple, paused for a moment, and then stepped back with the same judgment. "Acceptable, acceptable, acceptable." Danny watched each evaluation carefully. He noticed that Zilthara's reactions were not always the same. Sometimes her eyes flickered. Sometimes her mouth tightened just a little. But she never said anything other than acceptable, and the humans were never told what she had seen inside their minds. It was strange, Danny thought, to have someone look into your head and then say nothing about what they found there. Linda went before Danny. She stood very still, her hands clasped behind her back, her face blank and calm. Zilthara touched her temple, and for a moment her 4 eyes went wide. But then the moment passed, and she stepped back. Acceptable, Zilthara said. Linda returned to the group. She looked pale. Danny noticed, but she said nothing. And then it was Danny's turn. He was the last one. 11 humans had passed, and now only he remained. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. His heart was beating steadily in his chest. He was not afraid, not exactly. He just wanted this to be over so they could all go home and celebrate. Zilthara approached him. Up close, she was even more impressive. Her silver skin seemed to glow from within, and her blue eyes were deep and ancient. Danny wondered how old she was. He wondered how many minds she had touched over her long life. She raised her hand. Her fingers were cool against his temple. Danny thought about what he would have for dinner. He thought about the letter he owed his mother. He thought about nothing at all. And then Zilthara screamed.